Hello everyone. I'm very happy to be over here because this is the first interview on our channel, the Inclusion Collective Goa. My name is Purva. I am a resource room teacher, and today we are in conversation with Dr. Marita Adam. Ma'am, good morning and welcome to this talk. And I'm very happy to talk to you today. First of all, welcome to the channel, and thank you for welcoming us into your home for this chat.
Good morning, Purva. Yeah, I'm so happy to be here, to have you here, and really honored that you have, starting this venture with me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, you have been in this field of inclusive education for a few decades now. So you have introduced a lot of practices and a lot of new innovations in this field which have been beneficial to us as special teachers as well as to our children. But before you came into this field, you already were having a different career entirely. So can you please tell us a little bit about that career?
Yeah, I'm actually a medical doctor in MBBS, and I worked, I was the short service officer, short service commissioned officer. When I first started, I was 5 years in the army as a doctor. Subsequently, for a year, I worked in the cancer hospital over here. It was a very small hospital. But yes, it wasn't, you could call it a different career, but to my mind now, when I look back, it's actually a very similar career, because the same kind of, it involves the same kind of, if I can call it skills, or, it really involves connecting, forming a bond with another person, and whether it's medicine, where in the relation is with the patient, or whether it's education, where the relation is with this child, it's the same thing actually. So yeah.
That's wonderful to see how the progression of your first career has moved into your second career, and it's to the benefit of all of us over here.
It's helped me a lot as well, so yeah.
That's wonderful to note that you see that there is a great transition from your career 1 to career 2. At the same time, the kind of work that you have done of helping people has continued. So from medicine, it has gone into education, but the thought behind it, the warmth behind it is still the same.
Yeah, thank you, Purva. Thank you.
Ma'am, I would like to know how you got into the field of inclusive education.
Yeah, that was actually purely by default. So I got married, and then I had children, 3 of them. So it was difficult to leave home. But I'm basically not a home person. So I heard an NGO very close by, and I knew Dr. Nandita D'Souza, the developmental pediatrician. And she said, why don't you come and volunteer there? So I said, okay. And what do I volunteer as? She said, teacher. And I was like, teacher? I've never taught in my life. But anyway, I went with it. And I still remember initially when I went in, I was handed all these ADHD, so-called ADHD children, which were supposed to be the tough ones. And now I know why they were handed over to me. Like for example, one of the children that was there, he only wanted to play board games. And I'm not very fond of board games, but I played. And I found that I was, connecting with him through that, and that's how it started. And I moved on then to learning disabilities, etc., because a lot of different children came. So that's how it actually happened.
So you started working with Dr. Nandita, and that is how you...
As a volunteer, I started, and then gradually perhaps seeing my work, and because we used to have presentations and stuff. So I think she also realized that probably, I could sort of develop this further. So she had written a proposal to Sardar Abji Tata Trust about this PAL, paying attention to learning, which was a project to train teachers in understanding learning difficulties. So, and she made me the coordinator, which of course completely stunned me, because I had to then develop training modules, and I had never done this before in my life. The modules were long, tedious, and I think the teachers who came in the afternoon went to sleep, but I learned a lot from there. Yeah.
So, ma'am, you have been working with those schools which are the government primary schools, and you worked with the children who were probably from Marathi or Konkani medium, but you worked for learning of English.
Yes.
So, how did you go about for that?
Yeah, initially it was tough because when we went into primary, even the medium of instruction was Konkani, which is why in some schools we shifted our focus to the fifth standard and beyond that. But I did realize that even there, because children have to make this transition from the fourth to the fifth. In those days, it was suddenly from Konkani to English. They were struggling. So the initial programs that were developed were actually for these class 5 children, though we did work with the primary children as well.
All right. And how did you show the benefit of your program? And at the same time, how did the Directorate of Education get involved in your work?
Yeah, so we started this program initially. We had gone into, like I said, initially the paying attention to learning was about training teachers at the center. But we realized by the end of the second year that it was not working. So yeah, so we had to go into the schools, and having been in the schools, we then had to not only teach remediation in English or in language. We found that was not working. Actually, we discovered that even when we were at the center, we had to then actually work with them with the subjects themselves, which we did. Okay, we worked with them, but we took permission to actually change the exam, what we were asking in the exams, at least in the midterm exam, the so-called midterm in those days. And then at the final exam, the children were made to answer the regular paper. There was a huge improvement, absolutely huge improvement. And I went with these papers to the Director of Education, Dr. Selsa Pinto. She took one look at the first midterm exam, and the final exam. The difference was so marked. She immediately called her secretary and said, "We have to fund these resource rooms," in front of me in those 10 minutes. And that's how actually the academic resource rooms got funded. It was these children's work that it happened with. So yeah.
When was this, ma'am? In which year?
Gosh, I don't remember.
Was it around 2005 or so?
Possibly. Because this project was in 2002. So yes, it must have been around 2005, 2006. Yeah.
So you put in a work of around 2 or 3 years before you actually approached the Directorate of Education.
Actually, they knew about the work that we were doing to some extent, because we had to take permission to go into the schools. So they were aware, and they were very, very supportive, I must say, because like in some schools, I had even said, how is it possible that a child who say comes from, say, Bihar or something, and he is now in the primary, say, and suddenly he's being tested in Konkani and English. He obviously is going to get 0 when he first comes in, and that's very difficult for the child and the parent and the teacher. So why don't we actually do it very gradually, allow them to answer in their own language, putting in a few words of, either Konkani or English, whatever it was. And they said, go ahead, whatever works. So we were very fortunate there. We were also unfortunate in the sense that at the end of all this, though there was remarkable progress, schools were not, I don't think there was enough awareness and enough sensitivity at that time. So we were thrown out of a couple of schools. In fact, schools who had initially asked us especially to come, because we were doing training workshops, and that's how they knew about our work. So these schools had asked us to come, but then they said, your system is no good, because if the child cannot write and copy from the board, I will still fail him, or we cannot promote him. So, I would keep trying to say this child is brilliant and can answer anything orally, or, if you give MCQ, he's done brilliantly, but they said if he can't copy from the board, sorry. So, that was early days. So, yeah.
And then you still went ahead, you overcame, because there were many more schools who said yes, and they understood what you were doing.
Absolutely, yeah. But it was hard. It was hard in those days. Not that we cried a little and carried on. It was literally like that, yeah.
And that is where I can see the strong bond with you and Dr. Nandita and Dr. Giselle. You have worked so much together, and you have that same determination among all of you, that it is very inspiring for teachers like me to watch that and learn from you.
And those were. But at the end of it, what happened was marvelous. Really, what came out of it was great.
Ma'am, coming to the next part, I wanted to know, since you spoke about the trainings that you gave for the teachers, how did your NGO Spandan come into being, and what were your objectives through it?
Yeah, so Dr. Nandita had also left by that time, and she had joined. She had started her own NGO, Setu. And I also found it was difficult because the Sangat was mainly working in mental health area. So I said, why not just do something? I'm not very, what's the word? I'm not very big on, taking on large things by myself. But I said, we'll start a small little center and just have a few children, see if we can help. And that was the original idea. I had just one more teacher, Maria Vaz. So she joined me. There was no money, there was nothing. So we just started it in my father's little house, which was empty. And initially we started with just the language program that I had developed. So we were working with that, and then slowly we started doing subjects as well. And children started coming in. And that's how it actually grew from there. Yeah.
So you worked with children, with the language program, you worked with subjects, and you also had teachers. I think Ronnie sir was there at that time.
He came later. He came much later.
Yes. Yeah. So the children were learning maths and they were learning language and subjects.
Yeah, we started with language only, but then we moved on to maths and subjects as well. Yeah.
At the same time, you started conducting trainings for teachers.
Yes.
So how did that come into being, and what was your experience of training teachers?
Yeah, I still remember. It was, I think, the month of April or something in Goa. And you know how hot it is in that room in my father's house. It was really hot. And then we thought, let's do a training. And how to do the training, so, with this. I remember we especially bought an air conditioner and fixed it just for that training, and we sort of said we'll, because we were dealing with children who were coming to us, but we knew that the teachers didn't understand what has to be done with them. In fact, some schools would send their children to us during school hours, with permission, of course, and say the child is doing nothing in school, might as well come to you. So this didn't seem right. So we said, let's try and train teachers. So that's how we started these trainings. They used to go off very well. I still remember, at the end of it, the teachers used to be like, like you say, they were inspired because of the work, and they could see what was happening and how it could change the children's lives. And we also had them working with our children in the afternoons. So that made a lot of difference.
And I can see the effect of it even today, because when I meet people and I meet teachers, I tell them about you and they say, yes, I know, because I had attended a session by her. And that is something really very assuring. At the same time, it is very inspiring, and it makes me look at education in a way where teachers are taking up special education in a way. So that is very, very encouraging, I feel.
Yeah.
So ma'am, I wanted to ask a little bit in detail about your English program.
Yeah. So you see, initially when I had started working in this area, there was another remedial teacher there. They used to basically teach phonics. So, the bat and the cat, and then you have the blends, etc. But I found you can't even make a single sentence if you just do that. It's impossible. So something had to be integrated, number one. So sight words had to come in. And very early on, I don't know how I realized that, the children cannot recognize the word. Pictures will definitely help. So we put, I based it on pictures, all the sort of key sight words, included the phonic part of it, and the children were able to then form sentences. I always made sure that when we taught words, say phonological words for cat, bat, or what, shop, or whatever it was, that they learned to recognize the word, they associated with the picture, they were able to then read this word in a sentence as well as use it. The most important component was the using, because if you don't use it, you will not recognize it when you're reading it. When you use it, it becomes pretty simple. So that's how it was developed, and it combined both these two elements.
And I can, as a user of these books, I can tell you that I can see as a child progresses through the program how the confidence builds and how the interest in learning more and more builds, and how it reflects back in their classroom. So when the children are able to, who were not able to speak English or understand English, and a few months later when they go back and they try to participate in the class, that is where the teacher can see the difference. So this is something, not just being English, but being something that they can learn, encourages them to try their level best in other subjects as well.
Absolutely, yeah. That's very true. In fact, this program was also used by me in a school in Chimbel, where I had children who didn't speak English at all. I worked with the first and the second classes. This was a very I made it very interactive. The workbooks were just a sort of an add-on, though I followed a kind of pattern, the pattern of the words and the vocabulary. But it was very interactive, and a lot of it is I have actually documented as well. At the end of it, they were speaking English. At the end of when they first came, they just knew uppercase letters. They didn't even know lowercase. They couldn't read at all. They couldn't speak. But the end of second standard, they were talking quite fluently in English. That was amazing as well. Yeah, so, and it was very enjoyable, I can tell you. That was really enjoyable.
And I'm sure there are many teachers who would say the same thing. I think across Goa there are a lot of people who are using it.
Yeah,
yes,
I hope so.
Ma'am, the first time I met you was when I was a student in Nirmala Institute for the B.Ed Special Education program. How was your association with Nirmala Institute, and how did it start?
Yes, I think it was mainly because Giselle Lobo was there, and she and I think Gargi were also the two main people running the B.Ed course. Yeah, so then they asked me to do the LD, the learning disability sessions, and though it didn't quite match what was the RCI requirement, which was also done, they had this add-on, of what I was doing, which was very, very relevant, because what I was doing was on the ground, what was required in Goa. See that, so the teachers who graduated knew once they graduated, they could actually function in Goa in the resource rooms, simply because what I was teaching was right from the grassroots level of what was going on in Goa. So that, in that sense, I'm very grateful to Giselle and Dr. Geeta Praise. So yeah.
And it was for me a complete new world which opened, because I had seen, before I joined B.Ed Special, I had seen children who struggled, but I did not know what it was and how it was. Mm-hmm. I had seen autism, but I had not known to the depth. So I have definitely benefited a lot from you being my teacher, my mentor for so many years. At the same time, Dr. Giselle also, because she has opened an entire world for me. Yeah. The way she works with autism is really commendable.
Yeah.
Yes. So ma'am, going on from there, and I'm sure as I'm talking to you, there are so many other teachers who have the same amount of respect and love for you. And they continue to look up to you for guidance whenever they come, and especially from the point of view when the children are in the 9th and 10th standard,
yes.
Mainly because of your work in Goa Board. Yeah. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, that was also very interesting. Madhura Joshi, she used to run an NGO called REACH, and she was doing a seminar on education, and she said, can you do something on learning disability? And I said, okay. It was just a 1-hour session. So I went and I gave the session, and me being a science person, a lot of the slides were on science, and in the sense how the children, what they write in the exams and how it is corrected, etc. I did not know that the chairman of the Goa Board was sitting there. And at the end of it, he called me and he said, I have been thinking of starting a board of studies for children with special needs, and I would like you to be part of it. So that's how it actually happened. And when we did start, he said, you will be the convener and we'll have other people on board. So yeah.
Wonderful, ma'am. And they continue to use to support children with special needs till date.
Till date.
Yes. That's right, ma'am. So, ma'am, can you tell us a few of the things, the initiatives or the practices, the best practices also that you have started through your work in Goa Board?
So in Goa Board, a lot of the policies were actually put down on, earlier than when I joined the Goa Board. They were already in place. And but what we did try to ensure, one was different subjects. One of the things is, like I said, I had actually written out, so-called modified science lessons for my children who were coming to Spandan. It had been done over the years, so it was all ready, and I showed this to the chairman, and he saw it and he said, let's have this for our children. Let's have it as an official subject. So that's how we have general science going on at present. Then I thought when we had at Spandan that why can't we do some vocational subjects as well? So we thought of floriculture, and I love flowers and plants. So I said, I myself wanted to learn. So very kindly the assistant director of agriculture came, and for a couple of months he used to come every week and guide us. Yeah, to Spandan and guide us a little. And we started doing things, and right from how to prepare the soil and stuff. And as we did, I wrote. The chapters were literally written like that. We did, and I wrote. We grew things, and I wrote about how to grow them, how to take care of them. So much so that the children also saw this, and it's amazing because normally children with learning disability find it difficult. Their retrieval is poor, they don't remember names, but because we grew all these plants, they were able to even name the plants, and many of them enjoyed it. There were a couple, for example, children with autism, some of them didn't like playing in the mud or whatever, but otherwise I learned a lot, the children learned a lot, and we were able to do a lot of Ronnie sir, also our maths teacher, he joined in, and he used to come out with some very interesting projects, like hydroponics and stuff. So yeah, so that's how it came about. And I wrote, like I said, as we got along. So at the end of it, we had a subject, we had the text, and it was taken up by the Goa Board. So that's how that happened.
So that was really wonderful. My memory of that time is that when you were preparing the curriculum, you were teaching them simultaneously, you were conducting practicals, and at the same time the children were attending the classes for grade 9 and grade 10 and answering their practical exams and theory exams along with you. So that was an entirely fascinating observation for me, how all this is happening, and I was very, very taken by your courage and your simplicity at that time, that you were just going ahead and doing the work without wondering what the consequence might be and all those things.
I think that's my nature. I go one step at a time. I don't think too far ahead. And it was working out, so it was great. Yeah.
That was really wonderful.
And then the following year we started home vegetable gardens as well.
Yes, so 2 agriculture-based programs, and you had a beautiful space over there in Spandan where the plants were growing, the children were going about in the garden, being with nature. At the same time, what I really observed about Spandan is that it was a very calm and a very soft place where children felt at home. And I as a teacher also felt at home. So I want to ask you, how did you attain that kind of environment?
Yeah, I think that's quite important, in the sense that children are in school all day, and then Spandan they came in the afternoon after lunch. Tough to come back and start learning, etc. So the learning had to be easy, which of course like I said, I prepared modified text for all the children. and I would print them out. So every child had their own chapter, there. We would do a little bit of this and then a little bit of, say, the floriculture out in the garden. I never gave homework. Never ever gave homework, because once they left Spandan, they had to go home and play and relax. If the school had given them homework, I would ensure it was done there only, and that was it. So there was no pressure on the children. I mean, I still remember I would be teaching, geography or something, and there was this child, ADHD girl, who didn't like it. She liked maths, but she didn't like cooking. She would just get up and walk off. I'm not listening to this, which was allowed. I mean, if that's the way it is, there's nothing much that you can kind of force on a child. But mostly the children enjoyed learning. They enjoyed learning. I mean, really, that was the good part.
That was most inspiring, because when we see children saying, I want to learn, I want to come back tomorrow and finish what we have started, that is something that is very inspiring. And at the same time, if we can make it happen in schools, that also would work a lot. So yes, so that was your work. Now, I would also like to ask you about all the subjects that you initiated, because I was part of the work done for everyday maths, and when I started, I had no idea what I was getting into. And in fact, even as we worked, I know how much we worked on the chapters, I myself, because I didn't know what exactly to expect. I had to struggle and sometimes do and redo chapters. But you had a very clear vision, and you had the right way of guiding and getting the work done. So can you tell me what your idea was behind that?
Like I said, I work one step at a time. I just knew that this can't be from the textbook. This is not. I think that's why you took little time to understand, because to get away from the textbook is not that easy. For me, it was what exactly I'm basically, I love maths, and I mean, as a sort of science person, so I like to do these, calculations. I used to do it when I was in school. I used to do it as leisure, do sums as leisure. So I started with the idea that what do they need? First, they need the numbers. So, let's start with that chapter, and let's not go beyond a certain limit which they will not be able to do. So I think it started till 1 lakh or something, understanding. Yes. So then I put in color and put in certain ways for them to understand it step by step. Once we had that in place, once the numbers were in place, then I think you brought out a chapter on how to use a calculator as well. And then we just moved on from there. Where do you need these numbers? You need numbers when you go to the shop. You need numbers when you have to weigh something. You need to read the time. And we just went on like that, one chapter at a time. I remember how much we used to discuss in those days. But it didn't take us all that long. It was a few months, I think.
For 9th standard, we did it in a few months. And I think it became a little bit easier when it went to developing 10th standard.
That's right, yeah.
So once we knew what we are aiming at and what we are working on. There are some teachers who met me who told me that they are using some of the chapters to teach those children who are at the younger age, like maybe 5th standard, 6th standard, because that is where the most important point is that all of your material that you have prepared, be the floriculture, be the everyday maths or any of these, what I like is the sequencing. The way it is sequenced is it builds up the understanding of the child, and at the same time the child is able to take it forward, and somehow, even though the child is having memory difficulty, you will find that the child remembers.
Yeah, because that's the person I am. I also can't learn. I have to learn very sequentially. Otherwise, I myself can't learn. So I guess it's showing up in that. Yeah, but I think it's a very, very important step for children to learn.
So, ma'am, coming finally to the book that you have written, can you tell us a little bit about that book? How you thought of writing that book, and what do you expect the book should do when a person reads it?
Actually, I never thought of writing that book at all. My medical college group I had joined, and I said, would you like to learn about LD? And they said, yeah. So I used to put little things, and then they said, why don't you write a book? Initially, I was a little, it's a lot of work. But then I started, and once I started, it wasn't really difficult to write the book because I had so many workshops done, and there was all the material there. So I just had to put it together. But what I had to do was, what really took time was, and I of course added a lot of anecdotes gradually, not initially. I started adding a lot of anecdotes. What took time was the formatting and the cleaning of the samples and the photos, because I used to just take photos with my camera, and in those days the cameras were not great, or phones. So the pictures were not great, and scanning also we used to just do. So that took almost a year to kind of do. The book didn't take longer than a couple of months, I think. So the idea was that because of my poor health, it's difficult for me to do any training anymore. So I thought, why not have this book, which will actually, if somebody reads it, will get all of what I would like to actually, share and convey. And also it gives a lot of the history of how things progressed in Goa, because I was there practically throughout it, which is probably useful for other states to understand as well. How Goa actually went about these things. Of course, there's all Giselle's work as well, Dr. Nandita's work as well, but this aspect of it is very much there in the book.
And I can also say that book, I have seen that it is almost like a textbook that can be used by teachers as well as by special teachers, whoever are looking to work with children with learning difficulties. And there is a lot of questions that get answered as you keep reading it. So that is something I felt is a very important thing for teachers to just go through it, read it, and get back and refer to it whenever they see. Because often what happens is you would start reading the whole thing, and then when you go to class and you say, oh, this is the same difficulty that I read in this book, let me go back. And then when you go back, you find something else. And then that is how you keep on referring back and bringing the instructions or the suggestions into your classroom.
Yeah, and you also, I think what I also would, not just follow what is in the book, but it gives you an idea that you need not stick to a particular path. You can always step away if it's going to help the child. If you think, of course, the teacher skills and what the teacher likes is equally important, because it's not easy, for a teacher to do everything. So your style may be different. Like I said, my style is one step at a time. There may be teachers who have different styles, but it just gives them that glimpse into an opportunity that you can do different things. So that's the thing.
So I have a lot of, I would definitely want more and more teachers and parents to read that book so that they will be able to benefit the same way I would.
Yeah,
so ma'am, let me come to the next part. Now NEP implementation is taking up a lot of focus right now. How do you look at children with special needs or inclusive education in this era of NEP 2020?
See, one of the things that I'm hoping NEP will, there are a lot of policies and a lot of things that come out. When it comes to implementation, we always struggle. There is no doubt about that. But first thing I'm hoping that NEP will take away rote learning. Because, teachers, what happens is for them it is always that exam at the end. And children should be able to pass that exam. Whether they have learned something along the line, no. They should be able to answer the question answers, right? So to get away from that, NEP I think allows now that scope. It sort of actually says, please do this. Don't go down that road. So that's one thing that definitely I'm hoping that NEP will bring about. Also, NEP gives scope for your universal design of learning. You can, find out how the children would like to learn, how the child can be assessed differently. A lot of scope is there now, which was earlier we had to ask permission for these things. Now, no permission is required. The other thing is, because there won't be so much of focus on just that final exam, perhaps teachers will not be averse to taking in, children schools will not be averse to taking in children with learning difficulties and other disabilities, because that's not just the focus now. It's much more holistic, which I hope will change the way we're looking at it.
I always think of these things like we were always, when we were doing our special education, activity-based learning, multi-sensory learning, then differentiated teaching, UDL, all these things, we were looking at it from the point of view of special education, which has now come into the purview of education.
Exactly.
So that is something I find very encouraging.
Yeah.
And as you said, as teachers, as earlier we needed to take permission to do all these things, but now it has become part of the requirement.
I would have loved to have been there now, actually.
But you were there, ma'am, in the start, and that made a lot of difference. Yeah. Yes. So, ma'am, now we have spoken about your language program and we have spoken about your book. So, if people want to reach out to you for these things, where can they reach out to you?
They can reach out to me on my phone, or on WhatsApp, or on my email as well, I think.
Okay. All right. So I'll be sure to share your phone number and email address.
Yeah,
yes. So, ma'am, we've had a very wonderful conversation. I have gone back down the memory lane.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, me too. It's been lovely. Yeah.
So, ma'am, apart from this, is there anything else you would like to tell?
Just carry on doing what you're doing, Purva. You can make a huge change in what's coming. So yeah, just go ahead and keep doing what you're doing. I hope and also a lot of videos, I think, with people from different states, people who are in the schools, people whom you would find relevant would really help, I think, spread the word. So all the best to your site. It's called the Collective. The
Inclusion Collective.
Inclusion Collective, yeah, right. So, and I'm looking forward to it, surging and marching ahead.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for your support as well as for your encouraging and kind words. Ma'am, thank you very much for this inspiring conversation that we had today, and I hope that we have more and more such conversations in the future. Maybe we could take certain topics, as probably if there are teachers who have any interest, and if they can let us know what they are interested in, we could go more into depth. And I'm sure from our conversation today, our viewers will also get a lot to take back home with them.
I hope so.
Ma'am, thank you very much for agreeing to talk with us today. And at the same time, I would thank you for having us in your home. And I would also thank the viewers for taking the time to listen to us. And
I would like to thank your son for taking time out. I mean, youngsters these days find it difficult to give the time. So thank you very, very much, Manu, for recording this. Yeah, thank you.
And also we are learning something from the new generation. When we are talking about technology, about AI, there is something we are not natives to it. So we need the natives.
I know, very important.
Ma'am, thank you very much.
It
was a wonderful conversation.
Thank you, Purva. Thank you, Manu. Thank you.